What's up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA, the biggest stories with the local experts. I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Today, we'll be chatting with Doug Norrie from Locked On Nets, as it appears that Kevin Durant and the Brooklyn Nets ownership group have reached an agreement with Tsai, Sean Marks, everybody involved, top to bottom, head coach Steve Nash, that they have one collective goal in mind, and that is to win a championship, to bring a championship back to Brooklyn. How will this tentative partnership pan out? Will KD be bought in to start the season? And will he maybe realize that the Brooklyn Nets are just the best possible spot for him to be moving forward? But first, we have a quick message from our friends over at NHTSA. Because look, are you one of those people who thinks it's okay to drive around high? What's the worst that can happen, right? You end up driving a little bit below the speed limit, possibly, maybe a little bit slower than usual. It's no big deal, right? Wrong. The truth is, reaction times are slower. They slow down significantly when you're high. You not only put yourself in danger, but everybody around you. Talk about a buzzkill. Stop kidding yourself. It's not okay to drive high. If you've been using marijuana in any form, do not get behind the wheel. If you feel different, you drive different. Drive high, get a DUI. Joining us now is Doug Norrie from Locked On Nets. You can follow on Twitter at Doug Norrie. Now, Doug, Kevin Durant and the Nets apparently agreeing to move forward together with one collective goal in mind of bringing an NBA championship to Brooklyn. Now, however, tenuous this relationship feels at this current point in time after everything that's been going on the last, couple months, the entire offseason, it pretty much feels like. Does this feel like almost a begrudging agreement, or more so of a turning point in which KD has realized that Brooklyn might, actually be the best situation for him moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I probably is somewhat begrudging. I mean, it's not what he had stated he wanted. Nothing else seemed to have changed on the Nets end of things. So at that point, unless there was some kind of misunderstanding, which you usually don't get to, when it comes to trade requests, short of that, the Nets didn't change their stance at all. They didn't fire the coach. They didn't fire the GM. They didn't make any player personnel movement. They didn't sign Kyrie. I mean, none of that stuff that you would have thought would have been a needle mover for Durant happened. And at least for now, they got into a room and said, this is the best way forward. Look, you're allowed to change your mind about things. I think we live in a society where it's like, if you change your mind, it looks like you're a flip-flopper or it looks like you're weak or anything like that. You're allowed to, at some point, just say, hey, turns out that this might be the best path forward. I don't think that's an ethical or moral indictment of somebody, although it's been framed that way, I think. So I think is it begrudging? I'm sure at some point, but it also just could have been the best option because, when it got down to when rubber met the road on some of these trade demands, what really materialized? Not much. That can be a little humbling too. And so, I don't know, who knows what happened in this room? I'm sure it wasn't all just like a peace circle with everyone holding hands and doing a lap around the campfire. But these guys are professionals. They've all been in this business and the industry for a long time. And sometimes this is just the way it plays out. And I think that's where we are. So I think it's somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, and I kind of fully agree with you, right? When presented with new facts, new information, it's totally fine, right? You make a new, more informed decision as to where you were before. And even though it may, maybe there's not a whole ton of new information, maybe just some new perspective kind of on the situation for KD, at least as far as his decision to kind of move forward with the Nets and, rescind his previous trade request. I mean, we'll see how it plays out. But when you look at, obviously we still need to see what this Nets team actually looks like on the floor, whether they can actually kind of piece this whole thing together. But at this point, how much credit should Sean Marks and Tsai get for kind of navigating this situation and not completely caving to KD's demands earlier on?
Yeah, you have to get a ton of credit based on what happened. Right now, on the one hand, you could say, well, maybe that was some of their own creation. So then you have to walk back some of the credit. Like if you think that some of the blame for Durant asking out falls into their laps, which I think some of it does, at least from the GM standpoint. I think there's a number of missteps and moves that kind of went wrong for the Nets here over the last couple of years. So from that point, it's hard to get credit for maybe, getting back something that you created. Now, that being said, once the trade demand is made and you get out of it without making a trade, you have to get credit for that. That is there. And I think to some degree that path was forged a little bit by Daryl Morey last year with Ben Simmons. They have something of a template to say, hey, when a guy asks out, you're not obligated to just ship him out to the first person that offers a big contract or a big trade package or a trade package too. So I think Norrie helped a little bit with that he stood firm on the Simmons thing for basically looked like he was going to go, he would have gone through the deadline. I think he would have stood up for the whole year on the Simmons piece. So I think that helped them. Yeah. And I think, when you have Kevin Durant here, you have to just try everything in your power to keep him around, to get him happy. I think that, and if you're able to walk back a trade demand, especially a trade demand that looks like it was tied directly to you and to maybe the coach, and to have none of it changed, you have to compliment someone on being able to do that. That is not an easy needle to thread. They somehow figured it out. And you do get credit for it. I can't give full credit because I do think they were part of the problem to begin with. And I think Durant maybe was part of the problem too, right? I don't think no one here is coming out completely unscathed. And I think probably that maybe more than anything is probably what informed their decision. It's like, hey, we all kind of don't look great in this. So maybe we can all just come together and come out of this looking better. And the best way for us to look better is just to come back, play with the team we have, which could be absolutely stacked, and move on. And because I think it was becoming increasingly clear that anything else was just maybe that's not going to happen.
Yeah, right. Just get everybody together and say, hey, we can maybe salvage this a little bit, right? Like there's going to be some tough pills to swallow as far as just what this is kind of looking like, what people are going to be able to look back on how this offseason transpired. But still, that is important that they were able to kind of come together to that decision, at least at this point. And the timing of this decision, right, Doug? Like, I mean, how important was it to just come to this conclusion, right? To iron this out before training camp, before the season started, right? Because this could have gone one of two ways, right? This could have dragged on throughout training camp, possibly into the early part of the season. And at least at this stage, right, this gives the Nets the best chance to actually try to run this thing back with KD and prove, hey, like we are still a good situation for you.
Yeah, look, I think when you look at how the decision tree or the if statements were kind of branching out here the longer it went on, the worse it was also going to be for everybody, right? Because, and this goes back to how long are we going to play this out for? Or we're all in a weird spot. The trade packages that are coming back for you presumably aren't even close, right? So because we never heard about, short of the Jaylen Brown offer, we never heard of anything else really formal around what a team offered. So, and they can just present that to KD and say, hey, these were the packages. We can't accept this for you. You have 4 more years in the contract. You're Kevin Durant. It's just not reasonable to accept. So they can actually present maybe a real world thing. And these guys all know too, like the agents and everything. I know that front offices talk. These agents are usually as part of the process as anybody else, right? Because that's just the way the NBA ecosystem works at this point. So you have with all the information on the table, the trade packages aren't good enough. Now, that being said, what are we going to do? Are we going to get all the way to training camp? You are going to come back to a team you don't want to play for? That doesn't look great. How can we put you on the court? Like if you don't want to be on the team. So that, in Kevin Durant's eyes, that can start looking bad too. And on the Nets point of view, it's like, hey, we're going to have an unhappy guy. We can't make any more roster moves. We can't do anything. We're all just stuck. The theme for this whole summer, basically from the time that Durant put in the trade request, which was just stuck. No one could move. The Nets could not make any other roster moves. The Nets could not move forward and try to plan it all. Durant has to just not know which team he's on. And if it's never looking like it's going to get close, what changes that between now and training camp? Nothing. These teams, if anything, I think maybe what happened was, hey, we're not helping each other at all here. I don't think this is over. I don't think Kevin Durant is here for 4 more years. I would not make a life bet on that at all. I think probably something that was said was, let's go into the season. Let's walk down this hallway look like we're all together. And let's evaluate as the season goes up to the trade deadline. You play your hardest. You might find out that this team's very good and you want to keep playing. It could all implode. And at that point, we'll just revisit the trade at the deadline. But we can't do that. We can't do that from a point of strength unless it looks like we're all trying now. I think if anything, that's probably what was said. It's like, hey, let's just all give each other another shot. You're free to just ask for a trade again. You already did it once. You can do it again. I can see that more than anything have been the scenario, because what else they're just, like I said, everyone was just stuck. And then the way that the pattern was kind of unfolding, there was going to be no change. And this looked like might have been the only way.
Yeah, and if you've got KD sitting out for a chunk of the beginning of the season, then the trade leverage just goes even further and further down. And then suddenly again, neither side is getting what they want. KD is still in Brooklyn. No possible trade packages are coming forward. Yeah, it's a lose-lose situation. At least this way, it looks like a potential win-win situation if there is still a split pending further down the line. But Doug, in all of this, right? Again, KD headlines everywhere, all KD. There's still one other pretty sizable domino to try and figure out moving forward for this Nets team, and that's what happens with Kyrie Irving, right? The Nets declined to extend him to begin the offseason. That was one of KD's whole demands, things that kind of everybody thought was going to happen to make KD happy. That didn't happen. I mean, are the Nets just kind of expecting Kyrie to just show back up to work and play his heart out, or is that kind of the next okay, finally, KD's situation taken care of, and then they turn their attention? They're like, all right, what do we got to do with Kyrie now?
Well, in the Nets' favor here, they have done all the right things, quote unquote, with Kyrie in this offseason. He's been a big part of their promotional stuff. Like he's had, there's been no controversy around him. His stuff is usually not of the typical NBA controversy stuff. It's usually just kind of out of left field things, but there's been nothing even like that. It's been, if you follow Nets sort of just the social media stuff, it's been a lot of Kyrie centric stuff. He does a lot of camps. He does a lot of stuff over the summer. And they have highlighted a lot of that. And so, from that point of view, that relationship for a 1-year relationship, because it hasn't been re-signed at this point, looks pretty good. The Nets also needed to market something because with Durant unsure, someone's got to go on the court that people want to buy tickets for. And Kyrie Irving, when he plays, is definitely one of those dudes. So I think from the Nets perspective, all that stuff has been pretty positive. It doesn't make sense to have it go any other way. His stance, it seems very positive right now. Like this relationship looks like they might be somewhat on the same page about, and it's funny, like it's all about sort of like value, just getting the value back to where it should be, right? Like Kyrie Irving's value has clearly declined a little bit here based on other things. The way to get that back up is to have everyone kind of looking like they're on the same page and playing well. Like I think even no matter what you think of Kyrie, that is a very clear thing that needs to happen. And I think that has been happening for him. And so I think that I don't know if this means they're going to see a long-term contract come down the door. This could have been, or come down the pike. I think this could have also been something that was discussed and said, hey, he's part of our future now. We just got to come to the agreement on the terms. Like who knows? But I think right now, another theme for the Nets is let's all have it appear as if it's on the up and up. And if we have it appear it's on the up and up, it might just be on the up and up and we'll be a good team going forward. Like that appearances can also mirror reality. So I think that's sort of where they are now is like, get on the court, get that value back up, show that you're, one of the top guards like ever to play basketball, which is what he really is when he's all firing on all cylinders. And then we'll revisit a longer deal here in a little bit, or like, and that will be the case. Or worst case scenario, your value's back up, you'll get re-signed, you'll sign with someone else for the max contract at the end of the year. Like we can all help each other, even if we don't like each other. I do think that's probably where they are with Kyrie here too, with the understanding, if it all goes right, the Nets will be awesome. That's the other thing here too. Like if it all goes correct with the Nets, if it all plays out on paper like it could, this team could be amazing, especially on offense. And I think that's an easy selling point to sell to players too sometimes, is that like, hey, come back, play your hardest. We have other good players here. If it all works, we'll be really good. If it doesn't work, you'll at least get your value back up a little bit and we'll be able to trade you to a more advantageous situation. So we can all just help each other, even if the end goal is like not the championship down the line because it didn't go right. I think in that way, I think the Kyrie situation does kind of mirror the Durant situation.
I mean, how good can this Nets team be on paper? If they can get all these guys kind of bought in again together, how long does the at least tentative partnership and agreement with Kevin Durant last? Is it a temporary fixture, or is it something where KD truly is bought into trying to win a title in Brooklyn? You're gonna have us covered for all of that and more over at Locked On Nets. Doug, I appreciate you stopping by Locked On NBA with me.
Awesome, thanks a lot.